Tell me in the comments below, honestly, was anyone asking for this movie? I know that nostalgia is all the rage these days, and everybody's like, oh, we gotta look back to what the people in their 20s and 30s enjoyed as kids and find out what that was and turn that into a movie, then they'll come out and buy it. I grew up in the early 90s, around that time when Max Steel was a thing, and I remember even as a kid looking at that and going, I don't care about that. This looks dumb. It looks stupid. The cars outside are even agreeing with me. Hey everyone, it's me, Aaron, and welcome to another episode in the Gauntlet of Garbage. We are getting near the end of this thing. This has been the video series in which I have looked back at all the films that people called the worst movies of 2016, and I have watched them all back to back to back to back. And today we're talking about Max Steel, which many people have called the worst film of the year. In fact, there is someone on Twitter who has been contacting me non-stop telling me to watch Max Steel. I watched it, and first thing I'll say is it's not the worst movie of 2016. I have already seen worse movies, but it's up there. It's definitely bad. However, this is such a weird film because there are so many films that I have watched this year that just made me angry, just got me enraged at them that were not as bad as this. And yet this one, I never once got mad, never once got upset, never once flipped my lid. And I think partly it's because I looked at this and I had no attachment to it at all. Like recently I got real mad at the Tarzan film and I said I have no emotional connection to Tarzan, but I could at least look at this and I could at least look at the Tarzan film and go, okay, I see what you're going for, I see what this should have been, and you failed on every level. This one I'm looking at like nobody asked for this, nobody wanted this, I have no emotional connection to this at all. I don't know anyone who does have an emotional connection to this at all, so I don't even know what you could try and create with this that would be different from all the other big summer blockbuster films that we constantly get. At least with that Tarzan film, I think one of the reasons I got so angry at is I looked at it like this could have been a different type of summer action blockbuster film and you still just gave us crap. But with this I was like, there's no reason to make this at all. So I don't feel bad that this is a bad film, but I think the other reason why I never once got angry at this film, and this is one of the things that made it unique, that made it a very interesting, terrible film to watch, is that with all these films that I've watched, I've heard the bad reviews. I've listened to podcasts talking about how bad they were. I've read reviews that talk about all the problems with them. I have heard people sum up these films and point to each of the bad scenes in there before I actually watch these movies because, you know, I'm not just going to blindly grab films looking for the worst films of the year. I have to go out there and actually find the films that people are calling the worst films of the year in order to do this gauntlet of garbage. And yet, so many of them, I heard the bad things and I was like, wow, it's even worse when I watch it. No matter how bad it was in your description, it was worse when I actually watched it. Like Norm in the North is a perfect example. People have called Norm in the North the worst film of the year. People have said it is horrendous, and they have pointed to the terrible animation. Excuse that car outside. We do these on the thinking couch. You guys know how I do this. It's right next to the window, which means you're gonna hear the sounds of Brooklyn out there. My apologies. But with Norm in the North, everybody out there pointing to how bad the animation is in it. And I watched the trailers and I watched the video clips and I was like, yeah, that looks like pretty bad animation. But when you actually see the film and you see the stuff so bad it didn't make it into the trailer or into the video clips that they put out there for promotion, and you see it all in context and you see what they thought this should have been, it's like there was no describing this. There was no way to sum this up. But the reason why I'm bringing this all up with Max Steel is because, as I said, I listened to so many people out there. Double Toasted, the Stone Gremlin Productions, what's his name? Cinema Snob. I listened to his review of it, and both those guys kind of like went down, jotted down like scene by scene, like all the terrible stuff in this film. And as I watched this, I went, you are exactly right. All the stuff that you told me was terrible in this movie, it is exactly as terrible as you described it. There was like no surprises in this film for me because everything that people told me, like they told me that the suit looks bad, they told me that this plot point never comes back, they told me about how horrible this thing is, they told me about how terrible the acting is, how bad the production is. And it's like, it's not that they were correct, it's that they were on the money. this thing is exactly as bad as people said it was going to be. I've never seen a film like this before. Like, I literally sat there and never once got angry, never once was like, how on earth could you think this wasn't a good idea? I just sat there like, well, that's exactly how they describe it. That's exactly how they describe it too. Check, got that one too. Got it. Okay, I should probably go ahead and tell you guys what this movie is about, and you guys know me, I am terrible with names, but even I can't screw up the names in Max Steel. It's about this kid, Max, whose dad was a scientist. I screwed up the word dad? Are you kidding me on this one? His dad, a couple years ago, died in a mysterious freak accident. And now, all of a sudden, one day out of nowhere, he's getting weird electric powers, like electrical objects are shorting out around him, or they're doing... Okay, I just gotta go ahead and jump into this one. There is a joke that they put in here that... I honestly don't know if they wanted it to be this joke, and forgive me everyone in the audience who is of younger ages, but I have to point this one out there because this is the one that made my jaw drop. There is a joke in here in which, as I said, machines are acting up around him and responding to his emotional state, and he is watching this pretty girl walk away, and he's going into his little dream fantasy, and then the soda can vending machine shoots out a ton of cans all at once, just like that. I was like, did they just put... I don't even want to say it, but did they just have that soda machine... You know what, I ain't gonna say it. You guys know what I'm trying to say. It just seemed like a very weird joke to put in there. I don't think that they actually meant for it to be that, but it's totally what it looked like. But he's also got weird liquid stuff floating around his hands, which I have also heard people describe as looking like... This is a really dirty film when you actually just go for the symbolism of it all. But we're going to move around that. But then all of a sudden, one day, like I said, electrical powers are forming around him and he's like exploding with electricity. And then this little tiny robot called Steel pops up, and Steel is played by... Hold on, got this. Steel is played by Josh Brenner, and that is the saddest thing in this, because I like Josh Brenner. For the past couple years, he's been on The Maron Show, and he's been great on The Maron Show. I love him on that. And I was like, oh, dude, this was like your big debut in the movies. There's only one other person in this film who is a little bit sadder than that. His mom is played by Maria Bello, but she never once leaves the house in this, and I was like, you filmed this at her summer house, or you bought this house for her, and I was like, you can just move in here, just, you know, we'll just come and film around you, we'll do it all in a day. So I don't feel bad for her. I feel really bad for Andy Garcia, because Andy Garcia used to be the business partner of his dad, and now he's trying to like give Max some guidance, and he's very clearly the villain in this whole film. But so the little robot Steel teams up with Max. They have an unlikely friendship at first, but then Steel starts teaching him how to use these powers and how he can use that electrical powers to enhance his own physical abilities, which means he can now do parkour. This is the laziest freaking superhero film I've ever seen, because I honestly don't know what the budget of this thing was, but it had to have been like maybe 15 million max, no pun intended. Because the way they test out his powers is he goes to the site where his dad's lab exploded. It's just a big empty building now, and he feels like the electrical ability surging up in him, and Steel's like, well, you can use that to enhance your own abilities. So he starts like running around the whole warehouse, and like they show his super speed in the laziest way possible. They get some guy, like from a long shot, like from here, some guy who kind of looks like him, like he's standing and just kind of like bends his head down and so that you can't see his face, and then all of a sudden the camera just pans over quickly, and then you see him standing right there in front of us like, oh my goodness, I just moved so fast. It's like, are you kidding me? You couldn't even like just speed up film? You couldn't even just like speed up the footage to make him look quick? Even that would have been better than this. That looked horrible. And then he starts testing out his agility and just starts doing flips. That's it. He starts like running upstairs, and it's the worst parkour you've ever seen. Like, go on YouTube, just type in parkour. You will see instantly better stuff than what you're getting here, because he's just like running upstairs and then jumping over the rails and like landing on the ground, and it's like, oh man, I can't believe I did that. It's like, yeah, almost anyone can do what you just did. That is the worst parkour that you could show up. Like, he does flips in midair, which is like, alright, that requires some physical abilities, but it's nothing superhuman. Like, what kids do at the Olympics is far more impressive than that. They're superhuman compared to these superhuman abilities you're telling me in here. And like, they have him like punch through walls, but it's like, that's nothing special, man. That's, I mean, if that was your super speed and that was your super agility, you've already failed twice. It doesn't matter if you haven't punched through walls. I'm just gonna look at it like you're punching through cardboard. I don't care, man. It is the lamest excuse for superhuman abilities. But then, of course, when Steel bonds to him, he then goes into Max Steel mode, and he gets like this super suit around him. Super suit doesn't do anything at all until like the end of the film. Like, he just gets in the super suit, and it's just like, oh wow, and it is clearly like a costume store style costume. This, oh, I feel so bad for the costume designers, because I know people who have worked on crappy films like this, and they will tell you they take our budget away. We have like no budget to make this, and it's like, hey man, with what you had, you probably did the best that you could, but I can't really give you any credit on this one either, because it still looks terrible. I'm sorry, this was a lose-lose situation for you guys. Hopefully you got paid. That's all I can say. But so he gets these powers, and the only time that he really like does anything kind of superhuman is out of nowhere. Out of nowhere in here. Like, they have briefly mentioned that there are these alien beings coming and attacking. Out of nowhere, he gets attacked by a giant living tornado. And I looked up images of this to try and use in for like the title card of this, and one of the images that popped up was like a giant walking fire person, a giant walking water person, a giant walking stone person. I was like, so he's supposed to be facing like elementals, but none of those guys pop up in this film. None of them pop up in here. Only the giant tornado dude pops up in here, and he pops up to attack Max, and like then Max just bonds with Steel, becomes Max Steel, fires out a Kamehameha, hits the thing in its chest, and then disperses, and that is the last you hear about these things. Like, just a tornado monster out of nowhere takes it out. That plot is resolved, I guess. That's gone, because then it moves into the rest of the plot, and it's Andy Garcia's character being revealed to really be the villain, and he puts on this, his own, like, Max Steel suit. It looks horrible. Holy cow. There are not words. This is the one thing that I will say. Like I said, I didn't really get mad at this film simply because the way that people describe this to me, it's exactly as bad as it appears on screen. This is the one thing that was worse. People told me that Andy Garcia's costume was terrible. Oh, there are not words for it. There are not words for it. Because, listen, I've seen those costumes where it's like, yeah, it makes you look like an action figure. Yeah, it doesn't look real. It looks like an action figure. This looks like they took a giant action figure, hollowed it out, and shoved Andy Garcia inside this thing. Like, he doesn't look comfortable. It doesn't look like he can even move in this thing. It's just him in like giant, God, hopefully I was able to find a picture of it and I just put it up there right there. Because I didn't see any pictures of that when I was searching around the web. But yeah, hopefully I was able to find a picture of it, because he looks awful. He's got this giant claw that looks like it's just made out of cardboard. Like, I remember once when I was a kid, I tried to make a robot costume for school, because at my school we had like dress up theme week once, in which like one of the days it was history day. It was dress up as any time period in history, and I was like, I'm gonna be rebellious. I'm gonna dress up like someone from the future. So I made myself a giant like robot arm and brought it in. And I was like, that looks exactly what I made as a kid. This looks dumb. Oh, and they have the big fight scene between the two of them. It's a horrible fight scene. Max, when he's in his Max Steel like robo suit mode, he doesn't really do anything. The only powers that he shows off is, you know, his flips. He does some flips, and also he has like a camouflage mode, so he can hide from him, which again is like the cheapest special effect you can make, because yeah, it doesn't cost anything to not have a person standing there. It's like, oh, he's invisible. I could say that Michelle is invisible sitting right next to me on the couch right now. That's not a special effect I had to spend money on. I want to turn to the people who made this and go, if you want to start a franchise, because apparently this was supposed to be the start of like a Mattel shared universe thing. This was supposed to be their Iron Man, and they're gonna bring in all their other Mattel properties. And it's like, dude, for real? You try to start up your own shared universe and you didn't spend money on this? And I want to be mad at them. I want to point to them and go, what the heck is wrong with you trying to start up a shared universe thing and not spending money on it? But at the same time, I don't want a Mattel shared universe. I don't want a Max Steel movie. I don't think anybody did. Nobody was asking for this. So don't spend money on it. Good. I'm glad that you realize nobody's going to ask for this. We're just going to make like a $5 million thing. Hopefully we can get the money back just from the few fans we had in the 90s, I guess. I guess we had some fans in there somewhere. Yeah, man, I don't know what the logic in this was. Because, like I said, I've had someone on Twitter, and by the way, if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's @ProfessorThorgy. I've had someone on Twitter contacting me for weeks now saying you need to watch Max Steel. Max Steel is this year's Jim and the Holograms, because last year I lost my at the Jim and the Holograms movie because I looked at that and I was like, this has a dedicated fan base, and it's a fan base that this property meant a lot to, and you came in here, made something that wasn't anything like it at all, and just wrecked everything that those people wanted out of this film. Max Steel is not this year's Jim and the Holograms because Max Steel did not have a dedicated fan base. It had maybe a couple of fans, but even they probably weren't asking for this film. And I look at this and I'm like, you probably made something like the old cartoon? Because I don't even remember what the old cartoon was like. I remember parts of the old cartoon, and what I do remember I saw in here, so I'm like, alright, cool, I guess. So yeah, it's not this year's Jim and the Holograms. Just because it's a terrible, terrible nostalgia film does not mean it's anything like that. Trust me, Jim and the Holograms is definitely always going to be, in my personal opinion, the worst adaptation of a property you've ever seen on screen. Not just because they got literally everything wrong, but also because it was just flat out a terrible movie, but also because Jim and the Holograms did something that I have never, ever seen a nostalgic film do, in which they knew that the old Jim cartoon had a die-hard fan base, not just because it was something they watched as kids, but because it was a cartoon that meant something to them. It was something that showed them it's okay to be themselves. It was something that touched them deep inside and meant something to them. And they asked those fans to make videos of themselves talking about how much they loved Jim and the Holograms. And you had people record themselves talking about how Jim helped me find myself, Jim helped me realize who I was, Jim helped me see that it's okay to be who I am, Jim gave me courage when no one else was. Like, all these emotional messages that kind of prove why geeky properties like this can be important to people, and then they took that, put it in the film to make it look like they were talking about the terrible adaptation of these characters in this movie. Like, trying to get these people pouring their hearts out about the old cartoon, and then twisted that to make it look like they were giving the big thumbs up to this property that was destroying what they loved. Max Steel did none of that. This was just a bad movie with no budget. And the saddest thing to me is that, as you guys know, I'm a big comic book fan, and I absolutely love the writer Chris Yost. He actually worked on the most recent Scarlet Spider series, which was fantastic. If you guys have not read the Kane Scarlet Spider series, go and check that out. It was such a fun book with such great characters. And then he worked on the New Warriors book right after that, and New Warriors was that teenage team that I read when I was a teenager. It was that one that was really big and really popular when I was at that age, and they've tried bringing them back a couple of times, and it's always been terrible. They have never once recaptured what I loved about the team until he got on the book, and when he got on the book, he was like, I'm gonna make this what people like, and he did, and it only lasted 12 issues because nobody read it. But me, as an old school New Warriors fan, I read it and went, that is what I loved about this team. Thank you, Chris Yost, for getting what I enjoyed about that book. He wrote this movie. Yeah, when that popped up at the end credits, I went, how? How did that happen? Like, I keep looking back at this film ever since I saw that and trying to think, well, was the dialogue good? Maybe it was good dialogue and it was just being delivered horribly. Maybe if this was a comic, I would have liked it. Like, I am trying to look at this and go, how did a writer I enjoy so much screw this up so badly? And it's like, maybe he just didn't have a choice. Maybe he just didn't care about. Maybe it was just a paycheck for him and he just did not care. Maybe the studio kept coming in going, we can't do that, we can't do that, we can't do that. Well, we gotta drop that plot line. And maybe they just came in, ripped the script up. Who knows? Or maybe, hey man, maybe he just can't write superhero movies, but he can write superhero comics. I don't know. But that was the only thing in this whole film that actually made me mad. Like, throughout this whole film, I was like, whatever, I don't care. And then when I saw who wrote it, I went, how is that? Like, I felt betrayed. Like, how could you do this to me? How? But okay, the police are coming for me because I'm yelling too loud about Max Steel. I don't even know if that siren can be picked up. That might have just been a weird joke that no one can understand. There were police sirens outside. So I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you guys for watching this. If you want to see the rest of the bad movies that I am watching, then make sure to click on the Gauntlet of Garbage playlist at the end of this. And if you want to see the good films I've been watching, then make sure to click on the Quest for Best playlist at the end of this. And if you want to see what this is all leading up to, my best movies of the year list and my worst movies of the year list, which are coming at the end of this month, then make sure you click on that subscribe button. Thank you guys very much. Come back next time. Bye.